So I'm just going to explain the importance of the last section of the poem, the one that I didn't get through with my class. That's from O Baby in a Manger right up until the end. So Baby in a Manger is an allusion to the birth of Christ, who, according to Christian belief, is the Holy Son of God, born into difficult, humble circumstances, but still the Messiah, which means someone who was sent by God to save the world. This image, this allusion to the baby as Jesus highlights the value of each human life and suggests that purity and innocence will save us, and that we should value the pure and the innocent, i.e. the babies, the children, the young, most of all. So it makes it even more, it kind of enhances the contrast even more when we see the baby in a manger placed on a pile of rubbish and human dung. So what this shows us, that these circumstances in which these people live are totally unforgivable and inappropriate for valuable human lives. And it shows us how shockingly human beings treat one another. So its mother, this is another allusion, a Christian allusion. Its mother had melted into the rays of the rising sun. Now this is a continuation of the Christian allusion of the birth of Christ. The baby in a manger is comparing the baby dumped on a heap to Jesus. And this image of the mother melting into the rays of the rising sun is comparing the baby's mother to Mary, the mother of Jesus, who was, according to Christian belief, chosen by God to bear his son because of her purity. In fact, this description, this image of her melting into the rays of the rising sun, refers specifically to the part of the story, the Christian story, and the birth of Jesus, the story of the birth of Jesus, especially the Catholic belief that, in fact, Mary was sinless, that she was like Jesus, born pure, and because of this, because of the fact that she never sinned, she was assumed directly into heaven rather than needing to die, because death is only the results, a necessity for people who are sinners in the Catholic belief. So this melting into the rays of the rising sun is comparing the mother of the baby who was abandoned to Mary, who is pure, an image of purity and innocence. Someone so pure, in fact, that she didn't even die. She was just she melted into the rays of the rising sun. She was assumed into heaven. And then again in the next line, we can see that her face is glittering with innocence, and her heart is as pure as untrampled dew. So what the poet is clearly saying here to us is that the mother should not be blamed for abandoning her baby, okay? Because she is pure and innocent, and what could she be expected to do if she is born into circumstances as terrible as those caused for the people in White City, Jabavu? So by making this comparison of the mother to Mary, the poet is basically telling us that we should resist the temptation to blame the mother for abandoning her child. Rather, we should blame the apartheid government which forced black people to live in such terrible circumstances. to blame them for denying black people the right to a dignified life and denying them the opportunity to fulfill their purpose, which is to look after their children on this earth. So it's not that the mother didn't want to look after the baby. It's that she was physically incapable of it because of the circumstances in which she was forced to live. So we're encouraged to look very critically and with hostility on the apartheid government, which forced black people to live in such horrific circumstances that a mother is not even able to look after her own child, which is her God-given calling. The allusion to Jesus and Mary highlights the terrible crime that was apartheid. And if God chose the mother to look after her baby and the apartheid government gets in the way of the mother being able to do that, then how terrible the poet is trying to show us just how terrible apartheid was and how antagonistic we should feel towards it. So, question 1, identify 2 different figures of speech and discuss their effectiveness. Discuss each figure of speech in its own paragraph. So, you can choose either the simile comparing White City Jabavu to a gigantic saw and the smoke coming from the chimneys to pus oozing from that saw. So you can choose that one. I would recommend that one because that's quite vivid. And then this simile as well, the fact that the smoke was smothering the houses like fish caught in a net. That's another figure of speech that you can choose to analyze. Just remember that your 3 marks in a simile or a figure of speech or a metaphor are number 1 for telling me what figure of speech it is, so simile. Number 2 for telling your marker what is being compared to what. And please don't just be glib on this one. Please say exactly what is being compared to what. So not only is the smoke from the chimneys being compared to pus, but also White City Jabavu itself is being compared to a gigantic saw. Okay? And in this one, the little houses are being compared to fish. And the smoke, which is disgusting pus oozing from a saw, is being compared to a net that has caught the people living in the little houses in its sort of prison, in a way. There's another figure of speech here, the alliteration, fought fiercely. And then for that figure of speech, you can talk about the repetition of the F sound, and how the F sound is harsh and that it kind of amplifies or emphasizes the viciousness of the dogs and how desperate they are for food that they're willing to eat a tiny baby alive. There's also another figure of speech in velvet tongues of scarlet. That's I suppose a metaphor that is comparing the tongues of the dogs that are drenched in the baby's blood to scarlet velvet. And I think the power of that image is just to create a terrifying impression for us of just how much of the baby's blood is now on the dog's tongues and teeth. That by now it must be dead because of how much of it they have mauled and eaten. So that's the figure of speech question. And then, so the step 1 is to identify the figure of speech. Step 2 is to say what is being compared to what. And then step 3 for your 3rd mark is to say, to explain to your marker what is the effect of that comparison. So why is the writer comparing, the poet, sorry, comparing a white city Jabavu to a gigantic sore? And why is he comparing the smoke coming out of the chimneys to pus oozing? Okay. And the reason for that is, well, what do you feel, what do you think when you think of pus oozing from a gigantic sore? You feel repulsed, you feel revulsion, you feel like it must be extremely, extremely painful to have that kind of sore. Now, imagine that the place you live in is like a gigantic sore oozing pus. So the effect of this comparison is to create a very strong impression of how painful and disgusting it is to live in White City Jabavu. Then for question 2, is the title an abandoned bundle effective? So when you get asked a question like this, you need to look at the diction in the title. So the 2 words that we need to look at are abandoned and bundle. Now, first of all, bundle is a non-specific thing. So it could be neutral, but the fact that it is a bundle and that it is abandoned creates a sense of mystery, that we want to know what is this bundle that has been abandoned, what's inside it that it has been abandoned. And also, you know, it encourages us, the word abandoned encourages us to see that if the stuff inside the bundle is worthless, then it's appropriate that it's been abandoned. But we hope that it is worthless, because if it isn't worthless, then it seems that it would be quite shocking that the bundle would be abandoned. The word abandoned has connotations of something, the thing that has been abandoned being worthless. So generally people wouldn't abandon something that they didn't value. So it creates a feeling, a sense of mystery as to what is being abandoned, and worry that the thing that has been abandoned inside the bundle is not worthless. Otherwise it would be absolutely horrifying. And then of course, when we learn later on that the bundle is in fact not worthless, it's a human life, it's a baby, then we are even more horrified by the fact that it has been abandoned. Okay, and that's for 2 marks. And if you explain those things, you should get you should have more than enough for your 2 marks. Provide your own title for the poem and then justify your choice for the title. So what I think you should maybe do here is provide a little bit more information for the reader of the poem, because an abandoned bundle is quite non-specific about what is being abandoned. So I would think of something like a worthless human life, or something like that, that shows us how terribly this little baby's life has been treated. Try and choose a word or words that convey more about the poem and about the horrifying aspect of the poem, that this baby, this innocent human life, has been abandoned on a rubbish heap. Maybe even something like baby on a rubbish heap would be provide a little bit more detail for the reader. So that's the title. Please avoid rhetorical questions in your title, and also don't make them too long. This is question 4 now. This poem is enriched by its powerful imagery. Choose an image that you find to be especially effective and explain why. Quote from elsewhere in the poem to support your answer. So what you just need to do here is you need to choose any powerful, quite vivid image from the poem. So you can choose the thick pus oozing from a gigantic sore. You can choose little houses like fish caught in a net. You can choose the dogs draped in red bandanas of blood. You can choose the bared fangs and the velvet tongues of scarlet of the dogs. You can choose the infant dumped on a rubbish heap image. You can choose baby in a manger sleeping on human dung. You can choose the image of the mother melting into the rays of the rising sun, or her face glittering with innocence and her heart being pure as dew. That's also a simile. And then you need to talk about how that image has been effective. So it's basically exactly the same answering method as you used for the first one with the 2 figures of speech that you had to write 2 separate paragraphs for. And that's it for the first set of questions.